everyone.
No. She chose to come. I didn't make the rules between you two.
You're fighting to change things.
For those who come after. Right?
I thought I was used to losing people.
Yeah, me too.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy has been described by many to be a perfect trilogy, an epic fantasy done just at the end of an era in film and society where people still held things sacred, where there was still a true belief in true evil and true good, and that true good heroes could form a powerful group to fight said evil and preserve the innocence and beauty of the world. It had meaning and emotion, and like many great success stories in entertainment that shaped Western culture, came from an unlikely source, filled with risk and little chance of success. It was hard work that created a labor of love, and that which it created, no matter the added content put forth later, can take that away. Admittedly, I have never felt this way about a video game. Yes, there have been video games that I've loved and put countless hours in, games that I think are timeless masterpieces, but never has there been a game that made me feel the way Lord of the Rings did as a film. Enter Ubisoft.
What?
I know, not where you thought this was going. But Ubisoft has been a juggernaut in gaming, especially for me, going back all the way to the original Assassin's Creed, that all the guys at school had never heard of while I was playing and obsessing over it. That game was a masterpiece, and the studio obviously had a massive talent, and I couldn't wait for the next installment. But as time has gone on, and Assassin's Creed titles have become yearly releases now, the quality of storytelling, one of the key elements that made the first game so good, was gone.
I am!
Ooh, they're pretty close, Kinu. Jealous?
No, please! Don't kiss her!
What?
Ugh. You weren't...
What? No. Never.
It was then years later that a trailer released for a game called Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and my immediate reaction to this trailer was, looks alright. Anyway, yes, I didn't really think anything of it. I thought the art style looked kind of cool, but to be honest, I found myself thinking, how good can a game be if it's turn-based combat? Yes, I was a turn-based combat elitist, at least when it came to action games like this. My last experience with such a title was Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, which I underappreciated, I think, back then as I was a child, and thought as I ran into yet another trio of orcs, oh god, not again, but how wrong my feelings then ended up being. Because like many who played Clair Obscur when it dropped, I knew next to nothing about what to expect in the game. I knew it was made by a company called Sandfall Studio, which were ex-Ubisoft developers, and that it was turn-based combat, but in terms of characters or story, I hadn't retained much of the information from the trailer. It would turn out, though, that apparently all the devs that worked on this game from Ubisoft must have been the talented ones that left, because from the get-go, this game grips you and doesn't let you go. In the first sort of prologue section of the game, they end up making me care more about the world and characters than the vast majority of games I've played in the past 2 decades of my life. So pretty much my whole gaming life. The characterization of the game's chief characters is done masterfully by every voice actor, which, given the nature of the story, is important that you feel a human connection to these characters. The cast, made up of Hollywood elites such as Andy Serkis and Charlie Cox, as well as industry staples of voice acting like Ben Starr and Jennifer English, who would go on to win awards for her role as Mael in the game, despite the fact that nearly every actor mentioned could have just as easily won awards for their performances. As for the characters themselves, they are masterfully written. It seems in the current state of video game development that it has become common for games, especially RPGs, to make their characters' dialogue wordy. That's to put it in the kindest way possible. One needs only to think of games like Starfield or really any Bethesda game, though Starfield is particularly guilty of this, having characters seemingly going on and on and on about details of their lives, feelings, opinions, lore, etc. Combined with the simply dated art produced by Bethesda's aging engine from the 90s, you end up having characters that, no matter how well acted by the voice actors, just come off incredibly boring. The characters of Expedition 33 are the complete antithesis of this. They are fully formed with opinions, emotions, histories, and more. They are well acted, yes, but moreover, their dialogue doesn't waste your time dumping every little bit of detail about their lives to you, even if you choose to ask them extensive questions in conversations. The game is smart in that it gives you the essential information of the character you may be looking for, while still leaving mystery and letting you fill in the necessary gaps. This is one of the many ways Sandfall does something a lot of studios don't do anymore. They don't treat you like you're stupid. Another example within characterization is that you learn a lot of these characters' personalities by the subtlety of how they express themselves. SK is probably the prime example of this, and through characters' actual actions. Lune in particular is a character you learn more of based more on her actions in the game than actual dialogue. Overall, Sandfall's approach makes the characters of the game completely well-rounded and feel more real. They simply tell you enough and show you enough that you learn about these characters and end up caring for them a lot. This is so important because in games, especially story-driven games and RPGs, where your actions ultimately affect the outcome of the story and the lives of the characters in it, when the characters around you as the player become things you actually care about, it drives you to feel real conflict and emotions on game choices, enriching the experience. And while we're on the subject of story and experience, Expedition 33's story is done very smart. I would say that I went into the game thinking I was going to get one kind of experience and ended up getting something very different. And every time I thought I had figured out what I was getting, something would change on me, changing my perspective. I will say if you go into the game thinking that the plot is exactly what is presented in the beginning of the game, you may be a bit naive and are completely wrong. But also, don't expect to truly know exactly what is going on to the last third of the game. I experienced all this, and from what I just said, you would probably think it would lead to a frustrating experience, but in reality, it didn't. Mostly because every new twist at progression led to new areas with new cool artistic environments, enemies, and more clues as to what was actually going on in the story. And I will say without spoilers that the story is one of great emotion and tackles subject matter that is actually quite personal, and I think the vast majority of people can relate to. Ultimately, the story is a very intimate one, and while it has elements of dealing with an existential threat to the world presented, I will also say there is something actually quite smaller afoot here instead of the usual larger subject. Additionally, while there are twists and turns and a great deal of mystery surrounding the plot, I will say the story is not a mystery box with no actual answer. Eventually, all is revealed and hard choices are made, and when they are, those choices are satisfyingly crushing. Writers Jennifer Svenberg-Yen, Guillaume Broche, and Victor Dillard will no doubt make a name for themselves now within the gaming industry as writing heavyweights with grand expectations put on them with every project put out. In particular, Svenberg-Yen will most likely garnish the most expectations in the coming years as the lead writer for the game, and her humbling story of basically being a Reddit writer and aspiring voice actor who just wanted to work as one of the game's characters is an inspiration. Part of what makes this game feel so rich and epic are its visuals and music. I don't know how they did it, but Sandfall somehow got Unreal Engine 5 to work properly without being a bug-filled nightmare from the get-go. And believe me, they pushed that engine to its max. The visuals in this game are quite stunning, especially the environments. The use of light and its direction in almost every environment is able to put that sort of 19th century European painting look on everything. It's nothing short of breathtaking and would make me do something I normally don't do in games, which is just stop and take in the scenery. I will say it's not perfect though. There are some instances, especially out of cutscenes in conversations with companions, that the lip sync of characters doesn't seem to match 100%. But that being said, hey, if that's the biggest problem coming out of a game made with Unreal Engine 5, then I think I'll take it. But the big winner of this game, maybe beyond the game even itself, is the music score. Almost everyone who has heard the score has come to the conclusion that it's nothing short of a masterpiece. I can say for myself that on hearing the music in this game, my first thought was that they simply just don't make music like this anymore for entertainment, whether that's video games, movies, or even TV. I can honestly say the last memorable music score, and by that I mean the kind of symphonic music you hear and instantly recognize what it is maybe the original Avengers film, and before that, Pirates of the Caribbean as a franchise. The last musical score that really made me feel anything and in and of itself felt like it could tell its own story on its own was the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but colored me shocked to find out that the next time I would get that feeling would be from an indie game in which the music composer is some dude Sandfall found off of SoundCloud. Yes, Lauren Testard has arisen from obscurity, creating what seems to be endless hours of music for this game. Seriously, every time I look, it's if they found more music to publish a new album. And the main themes of this game's music he's produced are quite possibly some of the most beautiful pieces of music I've heard in video games ever. And some of the best classical music in parts produced in, well, I don't know, nearly 100 years since Gershwin? But yes, the music in this game sets the environment up perfectly and is one of the most beautiful and perfect elements of the game. Would it still be a great game without Testard's music? Probably. But would it be as memorable and I think generation defining in gaming? Probably not. Testard's music and more of what he represents too, a wealth of untapped talent, arrives on the game development scene just as I think it needs to, preventing the James Gunnification of video games just as it happened in Hollywood. A strategy of relying on well-known pop and rock hits of the past decades to lift up the entertainment quality of subpar storytelling in movies by tapping into nostalgia and the reptilian part of the brain that's like, hey yo, wouldn't it be cool for superheroes to beat up a bunch of bad guys to Queen's Don't Stop Me Now playing in the background, dude? Because the answer is yes, it would be cool. Very cool. But does every movie need to have that? And do we have to suffer losing legitimate, powerful movie music scores for it? Because that seems to be what's happening. Luckily, Testard may help prevent this in the game's development industry by showing that amazing scores are still hyper-valued in games. Both he and Svenberg Yen serve as proof of something greater with this game though, which is that there is a wealth of talent out there simply untapped by the industry in favor of well-known names whose ideas are gone or never had them in the first place. And that if these major companies actually looked for people beyond them, they may actually have quality, innovative ideas brought into their games. But I've strayed far enough from the actual game review onto my soapbox, so let's bring it back, I guess. Beyond the story, characters, artistry, and music, there is of course the bones of the actual game, its mechanics. Expedition 33's combat system of involved turn-based combat, where it is still your interactive responsibility to dodge, and you will be doing a lot of that, and parry, creates a system that I think most turn-based haters would find at the very least acceptable. I can say from my own experience with turn-based games on this level, lastly being Lord of the Rings The Third Age, which again, I played as a child and hated purely because of the combat system, did have me soured on the idea of turn-based, but I actually quite enjoyed it. Do I wish it was still something more direct and action-based? Yes. But as far as the actual turn-based combat goes, this one is cream of the crop, and its interactive system of dodge, parry, and quick time buttons during moves to land more effective hits makes it feel a lot less passive than others. The upgrades system, if you will, can be broken down into several categories: actual attributes, pictos, abilities, and weapons. The attribute system on level ups does exactly what you think. It allows you to spend points to increase stats that affect different areas of combat. Pictos are basically item attachments you can have so many of as your level increases to boost certain stats or give you certain powers and have level ranks attached to them. Usually the higher level rank, the more that pictos will boost your actual hit points. So change them frequently. Trust me, I learned that the hard way. Anyway, abilities are earned actions you can buy on level ups that give you new attacks or capabilities in battle. And as for weapons, every member of the team has unique weapons with specific style abilities that are attached to them, so they keep the same style weapon. But that weapon can be upgraded or changed out with different versions found out in the wild. If this seems overwhelming to you, trust me, in the beginning, it definitely is. But as you play and sort of get accustomed to the system, the more you use it and face enemies that force you to learn how to upgrade, the more perfectionist you will get at the system and the more simple it will seem to you. Other elements of this game mechanically are interesting in their own way. The level design is fairly linear in most maps, with the occasional circles going round and around that you can get lost in sometimes. The overarching traversal world map, if that's what you want to call it, they call it the continent, is basically an Unreal Engine map environment that Sandfall developers smartly just shrunk down to appear more overhead for a greater world effect. One part about this that I actually didn't 100% care for was traversing the map using SK. There are certain parts of the map he can't reach, even though you can definitely get there. And you know it's only because he can't fly or swim. So if you can infer, that eventually means this will happen for him and those parts of the world will be unlocked. I didn't like this because just by this existing, it acts as a game progress checker. Basically, I know I'm not still that far into the game because I can't go there because SK can't swim, which means I probably have this much of the game left, which probably means a twist is coming to extend the game and yada yada yada. You see how this might ruin a bit of the suspense and mystery as to certain twists that may be coming in the story. Finally, one mechanical part of the game that many seem to focus on of late online is the platforming missions. These are essentially minigame missions that happen at beach environments meant to sort of break up the tension of the game, featuring the Gestrels, a sort of woodland spirit creatures, in which you have to platform jump through a series of not easy obstacles and paths to reach the end where you will receive a reward. They're cosmetics. I'm spoiling this for you right now because I don't want you tearing your hair out thinking there's something massive at the end waiting for you if you're not into achievement hunting or cosmetics. None of these are easy, as I said, as the directional movement controls of the characters in the game could be better, let's just say. But the worst one is perhaps the beach volleyball game, in which you have to use an attack ability to knock back balls being hurled at you to prevent your platform from being sunk, which even at its easiest difficulty, the last round feels like it was designed actually by a real live sadist who knew he would get enjoyment with how much this would cause you frustration and pain. It truly was torture, the worst thing by leaps and bounds I experienced in this game. All of that said, I was still able to complete most of those and definitely felt accomplished when I did it. In total, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is not perfect, but that's almost what makes it perfect. It has personality, and you can tell those that made it actually cared and wanted to make a game they wanted to play and entertain those who would play it. The fact that this game released on Game Pass and was only $50 beyond that and made as monumental amount of sales as it did, being an independent studio's first game, speaks to the quality of the game far more than the awards it's garnished, however numerous those may be as well. It's a game whose good not great mechanics are outshined brilliantly by its story, characters, and artistry, both drawn and musically. It's a game I think will stick in the minds of this generation of gaming as a benchmark for success and what great games were in this era. Just like something like Concord represents all the things wrong with the modern gaming development industry and its historic failure highlighted that, Expedition 33's historic success highlights all the great things that could come from the modern gaming industry. I, for one, am excited to see what Sandfall Studios does next and where they go with the franchise in the future.
It's been 67 years since the world broke apart. 67 years since Lumiere was flung into the sea. 67 years since she appeared and painted her first number. Expedition after expedition have tried to stop her. Idealists, fighting for the future of Lumiere. Academics, obsessed with the secrets of the monolith. And those poor souls who just want their deaths to mean something. None have ever returned. And neither will I. But at least I'll have seen something of this world. Seen what lies outside the domes of Lumiere. I'll have walked the path of all the expeditions who came before us. Tomorrow, the paintress will wake. And tomorrow, we sail into the unknown. Even if we fail, we lay the trail for those who come after. We are Expedition 33.